everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and today we're going to start working on the By the Sea mini album. This is going to be an 8.5 by 8.5 mini album featuring 4 pocket pages, and there is a tutorial for this, and it'll be part of the playlist for By the Sea, but I'm going to go ahead and start this process assuming that you've already built your 8.5 by 8.5 mini album. So the focus of this tutorial is going to be to add the flaps and pockets that are going to customize this book. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, sorry, I was just using that to hold my paper flat. So I want to point out something I've been talking about, and I've actually used it in this book. I've got this tape, which is a book binding tape. And we are going to start carrying it in our shop. We just put our first order in. I am really liking it. It's 2 inches wide. And I've been using it on my spines. And what I want to point out in this album is for the first time, I'm actually using it on the hinge as well. So the hidden hinge here. So what I did was I went and scored my hinge. And so I had all my folds and my hinge was trimmed out to the right size. But before I started folding and pressing together the peaks, I went and put on one side only this tape. And so it looks like fabric. And here it is in the spine. It's really hard to tell in this light, but it looks like fabric here, and it's covered with some kind of a polyurethane. I'm not really sure what it is, but it's quite sturdy. This is the first time I've actually used it on the hidden hinge. It does make the peak a little bit bulkier, but you can still slide your pocket pages over it. And really, if you've got the spine and cover reinforced with this and your hinges inside, there's really not much left to crack. Your individual flaps inside, they're just not carrying as much weight as these components do. So I think it's going to be a good call. So the other observation I made since I did that is the hinge is much stiffer. So the pages, at least without the designer covers on them, don't really want to lay down for me. So that's going to be another thing I'm going to try to figure out during the process of this build is once we get the additional weight on the outside and the inserts inside the pocket, will these lay down? And if not, I'm not really prepared to recommend using it for this part. I may have to change how far down I slip the pocket page in order to get it to lay flat. But I'm just learning, so I wanted to share that with you guys. I've been talking about that tape in the last couple of videos, and certainly for the spine, I recommend it, and we'll have it in the store pretty soon, maybe even when I release this video, and if so, it'll be in the more part of the video. So the other thing I want to share with you is part of this album By the Sea, I am going to feature policy envelopes. So at Creativation this year, Annette Green had done a mini album using By the Sea collection. Actually, it was a tag album. And I think she used this size policy envelope, but I'm not real sure. It could have been the square one. It's been so long since I've seen it. About 5 months actually. Anyways, I really like the way the policy envelope coordinated with these papers. The reds in the policy envelopes go with the reds in this collection. So I thought it would be fun to add that. So keep in mind too that By the Sea is a DCE. So we don't get all the extras like the 12 by 12 patterns and solids. So adding something like the policy envelope brings another pattern to the table, but it also helps with stretching the paper out since I don't have that additional 12 by 12 paper pack. So with that, I'm finally going to get started. I'm going to pause for just a minute and get a couple of papers lined up and we'll get started. Okay, this is going to be a relatively simple album. I don't do this all the time, but in this case, I think I'm going to repeat the actual flap design on each one of the pages. So it's going to be, from a construction perspective, very simple to put together. And I didn't really want to make too complicated of the flaps because honestly, I love this paper. I really like everything in this collection. Usually there's one page that I really feel like I'm making myself use. That's not the case with this collection. I love everything in it. And I feel sad that I missed the initial release when it had all the tags and pockets and extra ephemera cards, because I feel like I could have used a lot more ephemera cards in this in designing an album, but we're going to make do with the DCE. So one of the things that I do when I'm using a DCE is try to make good use of all of my trimmings. So one of the things we'll do in the album is, because we've done a lot of trimming to get down to the 8x8, that leaves us with a 4-inch slice off that 12x12. So that's what most of our flaps are going to be. Okay, so having said all that, I've trimmed out these two pieces. And again, it's a DCE, so everything's a 12x12. And there's a cut apart page, and this is from the cut apart page. So this didn't quite cover, so I'm going to use this band in between, and that's going to be our inside front liner. We're going to do the same thing on the back side. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sit down. And I want to apologize. I guess in my last album, I wasn't speaking loud enough, and that was brought to my attention. And if that happens again, be sure to leave me a comment so I'm aware of it. I can adjust my audio in my editing tool before I upload to YouTube, but once it's in YouTube, I really can't do anything about it unless I have to, start all over on my end and then re-upload it. And that's just really difficult to do. Actually, uploading to YouTube is one of the most time-consuming parts of the process. It can take multiple hours to upload a single-hour video, unfortunately. So the commercial internet's set up to upload and download at rapid speeds, but when you're in residential, it's really all about downloads. So you can download stuff quickly and stream, but it's really not designed to upload. And I am residential. We are a small company, so I work out of my home and just use my little internet here. So there you go. All right, so that's in. So I'm going to put the second piece in, and then I'll add the strip last. I love this pattern. I just love it. I just love this pattern. These patterns, all of them. So for those of you that know me, you know I've got a dog. Her name is Nala. She just joined me. I can hear her behind me. I'm gonna have to turn around in a second, make sure she's not eating any paper. We got her as a puppy. She was a rescue, so she's a mix. She's some kind of German Shepherd, and she's just getting taller and taller. So everything I have has to go up higher and higher. It used to be I could just put it on my desk and then she couldn't get to it. Well, her head's desk level now. So that's not high enough. It has to be desk level with a lid. All right. Right, Noah? Am I right, Noah? She's like, yeah, whatever. Just give me some paper. All right, now we're going to add this little strip. And then we're going to flip to the back and do the back side real quick. In this album, I am also going to do something that I don't usually do. And I'm going to introduce another media. And it's going to be fabric. It's specifically going to be burlap. And I really like the way the burlap sort of invokes that summer feel, beach feel. So we will be using some burlap. Now I went and looked at burlap ribbon and I just couldn't pay $13 for a roll of it. It was just too expensive in my opinion. So I just bought for $3.99 or for $2.99, whatever it was on sale, a yard of burlap and cut everything down to size. So just giving you a heads up, inside the pages, throughout the pages, we'll be using burlap sprinkled through. So if you don't have any, you might want to find some, or if you've got some, get it out. Okay. And again, like I said, because I put the tape on the hinge, it is quite stiff now, although I know it won't tear. So I'm hoping as I get more and more weight on the book, it will start to lay flatter for us. If not, I will try using the tape in a slight, or not maybe pushing the pages down so far, so leaving more of a space between the gusset and the page. But I'll try to figure it out, see if it makes sense. It just may not be a good product for the hidden hinge. It just may be too thick. We'll see. I will try, but I really recommend it for the spines. So for those of you that have been waiting for me to finish testing and make a recommendation, I feel pretty strongly about it. It's a pretty good product. And we'll have it in our shop shortly. Okay, that's in. I'm going to do what I usually do. I'm going to go ahead and turn it around. Just make sure you turn your pattern around with it. And these don't have to be precise. These just happen to be trimmed the same size, but they don't have to be. You could make the top smaller or larger and run a strip. It doesn't really matter. I just wanted them to match. And I think, if I recall correctly, how I came up with the size here that you're looking at is, this was an 8 by 8. No, that's not right, because it's almost 8.5. So I must have done 8.5 by 4 1/4, and that's why I still have a little bit of a gap. And you don't even need to have the gap. I mean, if you want to make it fit, that's fine. But I knew I was going to use this little strip, so I was okay with having that gap. Get my supplies out of the way. I like to try to keep a clean space. Easier said than done. So, thanks everybody for all your kind comments on the last project. The Lost in Paradise was really fun to work with. Those are some very bold patterns. Pretty bold for Graphic 45. They've done a couple of things this year that have been pretty bold for them, but I think have done really well with it, and Kaleidoscope being one of them as well. And then this, to me, looks a little bit more traditional Graphic 45, the By the Sea collection. So there's the front, there's the back. It's gorgeous. I love these 3 pieces together. And the anchors, just love them. Okay, I am going to get the glue cap on and go ahead and line up my next sets of paper so we can start laying it down, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So like I said, I'm doing things a little bit differently, and one of the things I'm going to do for this album is I'm going to pre-cut all my flaps. And this is super simple because they're all the same size. They are 4 3/4 by 8. 4 3/4 by 8. You're going to do 8 of those, and then you're going to score it 1/2 inch. And I'm going to sit down real quick and get my tape on these. And you'll be cutting your 4 3/4 by 8, and you're going to do 8 of those. Let me find my tool. So lots of people ask about this, and I'm actually trying to develop a tool myself similar to this. But for those of you that can't wait, this is what's called an Omni Grid. You can find it in the fabric section of your store. And this is just a pop dot that you see normally on the back of a telephone. And I added it because when I was just using this to tear my tape and as a measuring tool, I kept losing it because it's flat and it gets under the paper. This knob helps not only handle it, but locate it on your workspace. So that is that. I know I've responded to some of you in writing, but I just want to give you a shout out. That's what this is. I do have a friend of mine who is helping me develop a prototype. And if and when we carry it in the shop, I'll start letting you guys know. It would be very similar. One of the things I don't like about using this is it's very busy to look at. Also, if you notice, all those wonderful black tick marks don't show up on my black cardstock, so they might as well not be there, and that would reduce a great deal of the busyness. So I don't want to have actually anything on here. I want to have a groove that's etched in, and then it won't matter what paper you're laying it on, you'll still be able to see it. So that's one of the design things that I'm looking at doing. It will have some of the measuring functionality, but it won't be as granular as you see here. It'll be the common sizes that I use. I use an 1/8 inch, a 1/4 inch, and a 1/2 inch. And so I think those 3 lines are really all I need to use in the paper space. Anyway, in the meantime, you can get this. It is 2.5 by 2.5, and you will find it in your fabric section of your craft store. I got mine at Joann's. All right, so just a recap, 4 3/4 by 8. On the 4 3/4 side, you're going to score a 1/2 inch, and you're going to do that 8 times. Every page in this book will have this flap. The location is going to change, but every page will have the flap. And then when I'm done with this, I'm going to show you the cut apart page, because the next thing you're going to do to prepare for the album is take your cut apart page and cut out the ephemera cards. And I will show you. And then we're going to mat them. And we can do all that outside the book. It doesn't need to be done in the book. We can add them after we've done the prep work. All right, that's done. I'm going to burnish these real quick, and then I will show you the cut aparts. Okay, now I'm going to collect these and set them aside for the moment. Okay. So the next thing I want you to do is find your ephemera sheet. And let me see if I may have cut through all mine already. But one of the, well, here's one. So you're going to want to cut this apart. Or at least partially apart. Yeah, I've already cut through all my ephemera sheets. So one of these 12 by 12s is just these ephemera cards. And we are going to use all of them. So I have actually cut both sheets apart because I'm going to use the front and the back throughout the book. So I'd like you to take your ephemera piece, trim all your pieces down, and then you can see I've matted it on black. And these are actually going to get layered on top of one more piece. But for now, go ahead and cut all this apart and mat everything in black, and you're going to need 4 face up and 4 flipped over. So 4 will be journaling cards and 4 will be featuring the actual main design. So what do I mean by that? I'll show you, because I've already done this on mine. So here is an example of one that's reversed. So because we don't have enough variation in the pattern, we'd start to repeat the ephemera. I'm using both sides so that I can get more mileage out of the ephemera cards. Okay, so go ahead and do that for 8. You'll need a total of 8 cards. So I did 4 up, 4 down. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is pull our book back into our space and start laying down our flaps. Okay, let me get my tool. Do I have it? I think I got it in here without my pick tool. Well, I'm going to try to make it work without. All right, so this flap is actually going to go toward the spine. I'm going to turn it so that I got a better view. So I'm going toward the spine, steering clear of the actual hinge itself. And I'm the light in here. I'm losing my light. Double checking to make sure it's the same width as the page. Sometimes the flaps wind up being a little bit bigger because once you put the score lines on your pocket page, it makes the page a little bit shorter. And this is actually a little longer, so I'm going to take a sliver off. And I should have done that before I took the backing off the tape, and I will do that moving forward. So what do we say? DFF, what does that stand for? It stands for dry fit first. It's do as I say, not as I do. I always say it and then I fail to do it. So again, I'm just taking a tiny sliver, you know, it might even be less than a 1/16 of an inch, but it's very tight. And that is because I don't want these little corners going past the edge. I need a contrast sheet, which I'll get out. Okay. So I don't want the corners of the flap extending beyond the edge of the page like so. So it's very important to make sure that's trimmed tight. Another way around this, if you don't like to be that precise, is around your corners. And I like rounded corners, but it's a step that takes a little bit of time, and my goal is usually to get product out to you guys, content out to you, and stopping to round the corners on everything and every single mat that goes into it, just takes a little bit more time. So although I like the look of it, my goal is to get something out to you quicker, and I think you guys can figure out where you like to see your rounded corners and do that yourself. But it's two things. It helps you, it's forgiving on the side if you're slightly off, but also corners tend to get nicked where a rounded doesn't. So I still need to take just a teeny tiny more off. Okay, I'm ready to put this down now. So just some things to think about. I think rounded corners just stand up to time a little bit better. All right, so now I'm going again as tight without going into the hinge space as I can. And then I want it to be flush on the sides. So I'm sort of checking all those points as I lay this down. Okay, that's in. So the first one, like I said, is going to go toward the spine. And for the moment, I have to think about this for a second. We are not going to, I'm not ready to put a magnet in. I had to think about that from a process perspective. All right, that's done. So on this side, we're going to have a flap on either side. So you'll need two, one for the left page, one for the right page, page 2 and 3. And what am I going to do? This one, the large flap is going to go to the edge. And I need to dry fit first. I almost did it again. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I find that when I'm trimming for the kit and getting ready for the filming day, I can get 99% there, but that last 1%, you really have to kind of do it as you go. So I apologize for having to stop and trim, but that's it. That one went faster. The second one always does. All right. So I'm just going corner to corner. And I like to tack one corner down and then come across. That went in crooked. I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. When you're pulling tape off your paper, first of all, if you're using score tape, do it as fast as you can. The longer it sits, the more it adheres. I don't know how that works. It's some kind of magic. The second thing is never pull it straight up. It will take the paper beneath it with it. Tug it at an angle and you'll get a much better result. Or do it right the first time. I'm gonna get, my locator sheet out because I'm feeling a little googly-eyed this afternoon. We are having some work done at our house. They're making a mess in my yard and there's a lot of concrete dust everywhere. So my eyes are not happy about that one bit. Okay, that's in. Lovely. Look at that, just like I planned it. Who knew? Okay, so the next one is going to go on this side. So they're actually both going to be installed on the left-hand side of the page. One is away from the spine, one is toward the spine. And I'm going to double check my size. And I can see it a little better this way. Although I'm definitely losing light. And I'm going to take a sliver off. All right, I think that'll do it. It's me hitting my desk with my chair. I have this antique desk. It's really kind of cool. My only complaint is the knee hole space is a little tight, but it's actually an old banker's desk or typewriter desk. So I've got this platform to my right that goes back under and up like so, almost, and it's on a hinge like a garage door. And I keep my cutter on that platform so I can just push it and tuck it under the table whenever I'm done with it. It's kind of interesting. I like it, but like I said, my only complaint is the area for my knees is a little tight. Getting in and out or turning. All right, so I'm just checking to make sure I'm actually out of the spine. And I am. It's tight, but I'm out. All right, so that is in. Now we're going to go to page 4. Oops, I skipped a page. Page 4 and 5. So this is the middle of the book. So in this case, I am going to put, these two are going to be mirrors of each other. So I'm going to put both flaps toward the spine, like so. And this will make a little more sense when you see the next design element. So I'm going to dry fit and then get it in. What? Are you kidding? It fits. I don't have to do any. Oh, you know what? I forgot to trim these. Pause. Okay, sorry about the quick interruption there. I thought I needed to trim something, but I guess I'm not. I'm okay. So now, sorry, shaking the camera. When I turn my book sideways, it hits the camera stand, so I'll try to be careful about that. Okay, so this one, like I said, both of these are going to go in. This is page 4 and 5. Both of these are going to go in with the hinge toward the spine. The hinge toward the spine. Okay, great. Looks good. Same thing on this side. I'm going to turn it around. It doesn't matter which way because there's no pattern on our black, right? I'm going to just clip this so it stays a little bit out of my sight. Do I have a large clip in here? No, but a little one will do. Okay. I'm going to clip these pages down so they're not in my field of vision. Or try. There we go. Now I'm going, again, the next flap is going to go toward the spine. I'm going to dry fit real quick. And it looks like it needs to come down just a tad. Very good, that's it. I missed my pick tool, but I'm too lazy to get up and go get it. Nala is behaving, so I don't want to disturb her. If I walk in there, she might need some attention. I'm going to have to crank around. I apologize for all the lighting changes over the last few videos, but I just haven't been getting good daylight. This is why I hate using artificial light, is I'm now in my own shadow. But it was so dark I couldn't see the edge. So we are going to have to use it for the second half of this video. The other reason I like using natural daylight is it does a much better job of showing the true color of the paper collection. But when we're doing black on black, I don't think it really matters much. The more light, the better, as long as I'm not creating a shadow. Okay, so this is right side up again. So these two flaps are in the middle. This is page 4 and 5. And now we're going to do the same thing we did on the preceding ones. I have to remember my pattern again. So this one's going to be at the spine. If it's at the spine, then this one is going to be on the outside. This one will be, that means this one's going to be, let me double check on the inside, yeah. So this one will be down, and these two will be pointing left. Pointing left. Dry fit first. Dry fit first. Always, always, always need to take a sliver off. Okay. This is page 6. We're applying toward the spine. And I thought I did that right, but I think, oh no, I think it'll work. Yeah, we're good. I was gonna say, I think I'm too wide, but I'm not. Got in. Okay, and now page 7, we're applying toward the outside edge of the book. But I should dry fit first. Golly, I don't know what's wrong with me, why this is so hard. Right on. So I would say I'm taking off about a 32nd of an inch. And to me, that's because of the score line. So these are two 8.5 by 8.5 panels scored. Sorry, there's a gnat in here driving me nuts. Scored a 1/2 inch. And then when you fold it in, it's taking just a little bit more than a 1/2 inch. So this is really not quite 8 inches. It's just shy. So by taking off about a 32nd of an inch, we are now flush with the pocket page. So if you want perfect 8 by 8 pocket pages, you really need to make them 8.5 and a little bit more to make up for how much space the score fold takes. And here's another trick. When I'm cutting the flaps, I want them to all be the same size, and I know that the score line can create some variation. So what I do is, this needed to be 4 3/4 by 8. And I know that 8's a good solid number because there's no score, right? But for the 4 3/4, I've got a score line. So what I typically do is trim it to a little over 4 3/4, score and fold my paper, and then go back and in the now folded position, measure 4 1/4 and trim. That way I know for sure this is 4 1/4. Why do I care about that? Wow, it really makes a big difference when I'm cutting all my mats front and back, knowing that every single flap is exactly 4 1/4 because I've measured it after it was folded. So that's just a tip that really, I think, helps speed things up and gives you very strong, consistent borders on every single flap. The other way to do it, which is much more time consuming, put it in and measure your flap or measure your mat for every single flap because there is some slight variation. Okay, so now we've got all our flaps in. I'm gonna go over that real quick again. So on the first page, we're toward the spine. On the second page, we are toward the edge of the book. On the third page, back toward the spine. On the 2 center pages, 4 and 5, they're both applied toward the spine. On the next page, toward the spine, page 7, toward the edge, and page 8, we haven't done yet. So I need to dry fit it, and it's gonna go toward the spine. Dry fit it and get it in, and then we're done. And again, all of these are 8 inches by 4 3/4 score. Or as I've done it, make it a little bit wider than 4 3/4 and 8, and then score it, and then come back and trim off that little sliver to make it a perfect 4 1/4. Okay, again, we're going in to locate this flap next to the spine. There we go. All right, so all of our flaps are in. That's it. Yay, we're done. So now we're ready to start decorating. So I'm gonna set this aside. So one of the things I asked you to start doing, and we'll need these for the next phase. We need 8 of these ephemera cards trimmed and matted, and we want 4 face up and 4 face down. The reverse side is a journaling card. So we need a total of 4 face up and 4 face down. So 8 cards. And here we go. So here is what we're planning for all the pages. We're going to use one of these. This is our base mat. And remember, in the book, we've got a flap on one side or the other. So this will represent the flap. And then we're going to use these policy envelopes that I mentioned early on, which I adore. So I went back and forth on different ways to attach the policy envelope to the album. And I want the policy envelope to continue to be functional, so I don't want to just glue it down to the page. So I came up with 2 methods. One was to use this piece of burlap as a base underneath my mat, like so, and actually use this fabric as the hinge. So it would go behind the main flap, like so. So that's one way to do it. It does take glue and tape to hold the burlap in place. So the second way I came up to attach it, and I like this better, it's cleaner, and you can still use the burlap, you're just not using the burlap as a hinge. So this is the same policy envelope. So this policy envelope is slightly different, and you can't even really tell the difference, but what I've done is I went in, and on one side, and you have to figure out the right side. You have to figure out, first of all, where is your hinge going to be? Is it going to be on the left or the right? And at least in the case of this one, the hinge is going to get applied on this side. So I went and took the tiniest sliver off the policy envelope. And you need to do that while the policy envelope is closed, because you also want to trim a tiny bit off this flap. So you put it in your trimmer, take a tiny sliver off, and now your policy envelope is open and looks a lot like what? A pocket page. So we're going to create a hinge that's going to go inside this envelope, like so. This is 1 inch, scored at 1/2 inch. And we're going to place one side inside the policy envelope and glue it shut, and then leave this out, and this is going to actually get attached to this mat somewhere. So now we have, and this of course will be tied when it's in its closed position. So now we have a hinge to attach this to our album, and it can be on the outside, we can make it a floating hinge, we can do a lot of things. So my current plan is to have a full-length flap, and then we'll have a policy envelope, and it may be floating or on the edge. I'm still going back and forth on that, and I'm going to make a decision here in a minute. And then on top of the policy envelope, I'm still planning on layering, just for texture and looks, a piece of burlap. This one isn't really prepped very well. It's actually going to look a little bit more like this, where I've taken some of the strings off. I'm going to layer this on, glue it down, and then I'm going to glue this on top of that. And that is what our finished design page is going to look like. Of course, there'll be black mat around everything, but that's what it's going to look like. So that's where I'm at. Okay, I'm back. So I've trimmed out this this policy envelope, and I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to attach the hinge to the edge of the page, because the flap for the first page is toward the spine. That means my policy envelope will be toward the edge, so I don't have to worry about crowding my gusset. So I've got my 1 inch wide, and it's scored 1/2 inch, and then I just mitered the top edge, and I did that because when you put this in, if you don't miter the edge, a little bit of the black will show at the top of the card. So now that I've got this trimmed out, and I'll go ahead and tell you what the length of this is. It's about, it looks like 6 and, yeah. Sorry about that, I had to double check and I can't see my ruler very well. So it's 6 3/8. 6 3/8. It's a 1 inch piece scored in half. And then you're going to take a very small sliver off your policy envelope. Before you do that, lay your policy envelope on top of the page you're going to install it on. Make sure you have the right orientation so that you're trimming off the right side or the correct side. It turns out is the right side of the policy envelope here. But what I really mean to say is the correct side. So in other places, it may be installed from the other side. So be sure to lay it down and check, and then pay attention when you're trimming it, that you're trimming the side that's actually going to get installed with the hinge. Okay, having said all that, I normally install my hinges with tape. But inside the policy envelope, because I know I'm going to be putting things in and out, I am actually going to glue my hinge in. And I want my hinge to go in this way so that when I'm done, the hinge is down away from me, because that's what's going to get attached to the page in the book. So I'm going to install it this way, and I'm going to start by gluing one side down, then I'm going to open it up and glue the other side. And I want that because as I'm pulling things in and out of the envelope, I don't want them to get hung up on tape that might pull away from the hinge. Okay. And I want to make sure I get glue right up to the edge of the score line. I'm less concerned with here. Your paper might get binded on it, but I want to make sure that the policy envelope is sealed on this side. So I want to make sure that my glue is pretty close to the score line. And you might find that once you get it in, you squeeze out a little. Don't go too close, and be very careful about how much you apply on the inside, because you don't want it to squirt out and then seal your envelope closed. Okay, now I'm just going to slide this in and then press it all into place. Gently, gently, gently. Let that dry for a second. And then I want to make sure that, like I said, no glue came out the other side of this hinge and is in any way going to glue this closed. So we're good there. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm not so worried about getting glue all the way down here, because I now know that this hinge is adhered to the front. So all I really need to do is make sure that I'm sealing the pocket closed. So I just want one single thin strip next to the score line. And hopefully that's making sense. I don't really need to go, the more glue I go in toward the center, the less width I get in my pocket. So if I just make sure that it's glued on one side and not the other, I can use almost the full width of the pocket. It'll really depend on how thin this strip of glue that I put in now is. And hopefully, man, I'm in my own light. It really stinks. So you can see how close I am to the score here. I just want to stay very close to that all the way down. And this is really awkward because I'm left-handed, but my light's coming from the right side. So I'm trying to stay out of my, trying not to create a shadow. And that's enough. It's okay if it's open a little. It's not like anything's going to fall out of this pocket. All right, and then I'm gluing it. Just going to take off my extra glue. Cool. And we should have, for the most part, almost the entire width of the policy envelope now to store our ephemera or memorabilia in. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my normal practice of putting tape on this hinge. There we go. Now this whole thing, I'm going to go ahead and close my envelope, is going to be adhered to page 1. I'm going to try to get it under there. One of the things I noticed about the policy envelopes is these round discs are very flat. So what I did is I actually used my spatula tool and went around each of them to lift it a little to make it easier to get the string behind it. You may want to do the same. Okay, I'm going to scoop this down toward me, Okay, so now we're on page 1. So this is actually going to get adhered. Let me use my contrast sheet so you can see what I'm talking about. Get adhered to the actual right-hand edge of page 1. And that is going to be our second flap. So the policy envelope is a little bit wider than the first flap. So it's actually going to be used to hold that first flap into place. So I'm going to go ahead and move my tape and install it, and I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I want it pretty centered. Oops, you know what? We have to leave this open. We have to leave it open because I need to adhere all this tape to the side. So that was a mistake on my part. I'm going to turn it sideways, get it in front of me. And I can see from this pattern, that's up, that's down, that's up, that's down. So I'm looking to center. Get grief. Terrible light, sorry. To center this, and that looks about right. Sorry, I'm really struggling with the light today. Okay, that flap is in. Sorry, that took a little bit of effort, but there it is. So there's our policy envelope flap. And now I can close this. And we'll put something delicious in there, but not right now. So this is what essentially every other page is going to have this design. So there's 4 policy envelopes that are going to be used in the design. And the other ones are going to be a very simple flap, and I'll do one on the next page, but then it's going to be just essentially repeating the process. So these are installed. So now I'm actually ready to go ahead and put in my first piece of designer paper, which is this, and it's going to be the base mat here. So I just need to decide which way is up because the letters go everywhere. So I think this is the orientation I want. It is square, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to decide which, maybe this way. Breezy kind of stands out, so maybe that's what I'll do. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna get some glue on that and get it down. I'm just double checking to make sure I had turned on record. I'm having one of those days. I'm having a memory moment there. All right. I just love this paper. And it was so easy to design the book because the paper does all the work. And again, that's why I kind of kept the flap simple, because I just like the paper so much. I don't want to take away from it. Don't need anything fancy here. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, that's our base, and then I think what I'm going to do is this side, but I'm going to check. That's going to go like that, and that's going to go on top of here. So my question is, do I like this side or this side? And I like both. But I think let me double check. Luckily, I have all these others pre-cut, so I'm just going to flip through these real quick and see if there's a pattern. Another pattern that I prefer with the red. And I don't think so. I think what I do want is this. which is how I designed it originally. So I'm back to my original plan. I just was worried that this is a lot of the same pattern, but I think I'll do some embellishing here to help break that up. All right, I'm gonna open this up. I need to turn it so I can see the 3 sides. And also move my contrast sheet. Okay. Shoot. I made a mess. Okay. So all of these should go in nice and tight and beautiful, and part of that is because of what I told you about how to trim your flaps so you know they're exactly all the same size. And then again, coming back and trimming out these pieces goes a lot faster once you know your flap is a precise measurement. So this is page 1. So the next thing we're going to need is a way to keep this closed, and here is my current plan. I'm planning on, actually I thought I was going to put a magnet here and I forgot. I'm going to put a magnet up here. Somewhere, where's my, here it is. So it has to fit under this guy. Yeah. You know what, I blew that. My magnet should actually be under the blue. So I'm going to have to place my magnet here, very close to the edge of this ephemera. And then there's gonna be another one on the back side of this first flap. Now, if I had done this right, I would have put my magnet down here first, and then closed the page and located the second one underneath the main mat. And I'll fix that on the next one. I'll do it correctly the next time. Okay, on to page 2. So as you recall, page 2 has a flap, and it is toward the outside of the book. And then this is going to go here, and then this is one of the flip side ephemera cards, and it's going to get layered. So there's your look. That's what it's going to look like. I am going to start by laying this piece down and then figuring out, did I get that inked? It doesn't look like I inked it, so I'll have to ink this, get that laid down, and then I'm going to figure out the placement of the postcard. The postcard is going to have a magnet on the flip side, and I'm going to remember to put my magnet down before I glue my mat down here. So I don't know what I was thinking before. I'm going to get another clip to hold this in place so I'm not fighting with it. Okay, so I'm pretty sure, yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I got in here with my ink. I did. So this is really the 2 styles. So the page 1 is style 1, which has the policy envelope, and then the second style is this flap that I'm doing right now. And so I just alternate that back and forth, back and forth. So you'll see the same thing happening page over page. I'm going to turn that and put this in here and get some glue on it. Ooh, and I left my glue standing there for so long. Oh, it's not clogged. I thought it would be. So this direction also, pay attention. Make sure your words are going the right direction. That's the bottom, that's the top. Down a little too far. Okay, there we go. so that's in. So now we have, it's actually, is it too late? Is it too late? I think it's too high, so I'm actually going to see if I can, if it's too late. No, I can lift it. Okay. I'm not happy with the placement. I'm going to shift that down just a tiny bit. And then I did this one way, but now I'm going to try it this way. I think I'll get better results. I couldn't see the edge very well. Okay, better. I'm happy with that. It's still a little tight on one side, but I'm happy overall. Okay, so the main flap is this red piece, which goes in like so, but we're not going to put that down yet. So this piece of ephemera is going to go here. And I've decided, though, I'm going to only glue 3 of the 4 sides, so that when you open this, there's actually going to be a little tuck spot behind here. So I'm going to glue, I'm trying to think this through. Sorry. I think I want this to slide over a little bit more. Yeah, more like this. I'm just eyeballing it, whatever's pleasing, right? And then I'll have a little bit deeper pocket. So I'll glue these 3 sides down, and then that leaves it open on the back side as a pocket. But before I do that, I'm estimating how wide I need a strip of coordinating paper to go on the back side, because this is going to be exposed. So trying to eyeball, and I'm not doing a good job of eyeballing today, so where's my ruler? Can't find it. So about that much. Well, turns out that's just about 1 inch. So I'm going to cut a strip of coordinating paper about 1.5 inches wide and glue it to fit here, and then I can put this down. And then we can figure out, and of course before I glue it down, I'm going to actually put the magnet under it. So my magnet should be somewhere around here. Fat tape, where are you? Here you are. So, and I just want to come in from the edge far enough away that whatever mat I put down doesn't expose the magnet will still be covered. And then I'm using the tape to soften the edges. So I want to make sure my tape goes all the way around. Okay, and then what did I say? I need 1.5 inch strip. And it needs to be, so this is 6 inches long, so I need 5 7/8 by 1.5. 5 7/8 by 1.5. I know I'm going to have red. So do I have any more of that pattern left? And by the way, this is the flip side, so I know I want it to kind of coordinate with that. So I could actually even use a light blue, which is what I think I'll do. So I need this to be 6 by 1.5. Yeah, 1.5. 5, 6. Okay, so that should be just wide enough to cover that strip. I'm going to ink it and we'll lay it down. And then we'll be able to place the magnet on the flip side. Actually, I can do it now before I put this in. Okay, that's what I'll do. So I'm going to move this. Nope, I can't. I have to glue this down first. That's right. So another way would be to go ahead and glue this down and then find your placement, but I actually want to put this in first. It goes this way. When I say put this in first, I mean put this little strip on. Did I? You know what? I made it 6, it needs to be 5 7/8. It's a little too long. Now it should fit perfect. This side, this looks fun too. Maybe I'll do the gingham because it's on this page too, and I'll just pull it back in. All right. I'm just making sure I've got it on the right side, correct side of the ephemera card. I keep saying right, and the word I need to use is correct because it's on the left side. All right, now I can go ahead and add my glue. To the 3 edges. And I need to start remembering to put my cap on because my glue is drying. Okay, just gonna eyeball it. I'm centering it. Now, so my magnet's back here and my postcard is installed. So I'm ready to find my mate. There it is. Get some tape on it and get it laid down. Then we can put down the base mat. There we go. Close this. Now this is what I should have done on page 1. Before I put my mat down, but I was in a hurry to get some color down. And that happens sometimes. Okay, so now we are ready for this piece. So it's gonna look like that. So the magnet will hold this closed. Set those aside. Okay, I was just checking to make sure this is inked. And I may have inked it, but it looks awfully light on one side, so. This is directional. It's very faint, but there are words on here, so you might want to double check, make sure you got your directions correct. I'm just moving some stuff so I can turn the book and get a better view of the edge here. All right, there we go. Okay, that's in. Lovely, lovely. All right, so I'm going to go back and show you the first one again, and then go back over this again. And I don't have these selected. I have papers trimmed, but I haven't selected which one's going which page. So the front and back are going to be the same. The policy envelope page, again, do I have this one trimmed? No, I don't. Again, you take a policy envelope and you determine if it's going to be installed on the left or right, which will tell you which side you need to trim to open up your policy envelope so that you can place your hinge inside. Your hinge is going to be 1 inch wide, scored 1/2 inch. You're going to miter one corner, and that's going to be the side that goes up toward the top of the policy envelope. You're going to slide this inside. You're going to glue one side down, hold it in place, open it up, and then run a bead of glue on the other side, and that's going to become the hinge that attaches to the page for the policy envelope, which is what we have here. So if you open this up, you'll see that it's a complete pocket again because of the way that we've used the hinge to adhere it, and that we glued half of the hinge to the policy envelope and the other half to the back side of the policy envelope. So I went over that in pretty good detail when I was building it. This is a flap. It'll have a coordinating piece of paper, but these two things close, and the policy envelope is actually what's going to hold this intact. Now, having said that, during the build process, I failed to apply my magnet, which I should have a magnet here and a corresponding magnet on underneath this mat, and I did not do that. So don't make that mistake, but it will be a magnet that holds these two things closed. The second design is this simple design where it's a flap with a piece of ephemera card matted and glued to the top and left open so that you have a pocket here. So behind this ephemera card is actually a pocket and then a base mat. So this is all being held closed with a magnet that was attached to the flip side of the ephemera card underneath this strip of paper. Okay, so that's all held in place. So when you have two pages side by side, one will have the ephemera flap and one will have the policy flap with another flap. So it's going to go back and forth. So that's the design throughout the rest of the album. I think I've given you enough instructions to construct the rest of the book, so I'm actually going to go offline and finish decorating the book. When I come back, I will walk you through my pattern choices. But again, page 1, it's pretty easy. When you see the walkthrough, you'll see where I put the policy envelopes. But essentially, the policy envelopes will be all placed on the outside edge of the papers, and when you open, you'll have one that has a policy envelope and one that doesn't. So it'll be pretty easy to tell if you've got a flap that's next to the spine, that's where your policy envelope goes. So in the case of the center, you'll have two policy envelopes because you've got two center flaps. Here, you would have a policy envelope on this side and just an ephemera on this side. So hopefully that makes sense, but when you see the finished album, it'll be perfectly clear how I'm going back and forth. But essentially, like I said, the important thing to know is there's two page designs, the policy envelope design, and then just the flap design, okay? Even though it has a flap, I'm calling this the policy flap, and then just a simple flap. And that's it, and we just alternate those throughout the book, and you're finished. So like I said, I'm going to go and do the rest of the decorating offline. When I come back, I'll go over this in detail, and then I will have added some embellishments as well. This is a super easy book to put together. I think the hardest part is, and it's really not hard, it's just a little frightening, it was even for me, is taking that strip off your policy envelope and adding your hinge. And the tricky part is just making sure you're taking off that strip from the right side. So it's important to, when you get to a page that has a policy envelope like this one will, make sure you know which side you're trimming off. For example, this side is trimmed, so this one won't work here because the policy envelope needs to attach here. So I would have to use this policy envelope on, for example, this side, because it's open on this side and I can attach it. So that's the tricky part, but I think I went over that in pretty good detail. So that's it for the album. So, hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. I know this is a little bit different than my normal process, but I think because there's so much repeat, I think you've got enough detail to put the book together. And if you go through the walkthrough, you'll see where I put the patterns. So thanks again for tuning in. We appreciate it. If you please like, and don't forget to hit that button, subscribe, click on the bell, you'll be notified when we get new content, and share with anybody else you know that likes to make minis, especially likes to make minis. So we try to keep fresh content coming out as quick as possible. We hope you enjoy this. I think the timing is perfect with the summer approaching. I think this is a great vacation collection. And again, this is a DCE, and it's available in our shop. And if you click the More button, you'll have additional details on where to find the policy envelopes and where to get the DCE. So thanks again for tuning in. This is Daphne saying goodnight for now.